What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and welcome back to another Popper video and another report on what exactly happened at Friday Night Magic this week. As I'm sure you already know, the LGS that I play Popper at hosts a Popper event every Friday at their store, and I generally try to go every week. This week, I got to play a brand new deck that I had just put together, as well as lending a deck of mine to a friend that hadn't played Magic in a while. They actually did a lot better than me at the event. I lent them my copy of White Weenie, which is one of my favorite decks. We'll probably be doing some videos about that deck in the future. But what I played Tithing Blade, and I honestly did not do incredible with it. So we're gonna get into it and talk about the matchups, what I brought in the list, and kind of what I learned from playing the deck and my thoughts on this relatively newer deck in the meta. But before we get any further, guys, if you like the content that I create, if you could put a like on this video and hit that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at what I was playing for Friday Night Magic. All right, and like I said, I was playing Tithing Blade, or basically, there has been kind of, it seems, a couple different takes on this archetype, which is why it does interest me quite a bit. Um, Essentially, it seems that they're either going with more of an aggressive plan, playing kind of all that glitters type of pile with lots of cheap creatures like Thraben Inspectors, Novice Inspectors, getting as many artifacts on the field, putting all the glitters on like a core Skyfisher or a Glinthawk or something like that, and then trying to put a lot of early game pressure on your opponents. And then it can also go into more of a mid-range direction, which is one of my more favorite styles of play, being playing grindy mid-range decks. So that's kind of what I went with my build. But yeah, let's take a look at what I brought. So in my list right now, I got four Thraben Inspectors. I got four copies of Glinthawk, which is really, I think, kind of the bread and butter of the deck is things like Glinthawk and, obviously Core Skyfishers, which is the next few cards in the deck. Since you can bounce your Tithing Blade and keep replaying it. And yes, then we also brought four copies of Core Skyfisher. Also running two copies of Dawnbringer Cleric in the main board, which I just really love this in the main deck for mid-range piles featuring white, just because it has so many things that you can do with it, like three different modes, and they all can be incredibly relevant no matter what matchup you are in. So it's a pretty great card. And then I'm running three copies of Thorn of the Black Rose, which I'm kind of considering cutting one of them for another card, which I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But yeah, three copies of Thorn of the Black Rose, and then I got three copies of Bleak Coven Vampire. So I am kind of on more of a Metalcraft build with my current list. So this thing, it can drain for four. So the opponent loses four life, you gain four life. Something you can also bounce with your Skyfishers. So that's pretty fun. Um, and that's all I brought with my creatures. And in my instant and sorcery pile, I have four copies of Deadly Dispute, which is a really great card for the deck, because it creates more artifacts. You can also sacrifice artifacts. You could sacrifice a creature too. Generally, you probably want to sacrificing artifacts, and that also lets you draw two cards. Four copies of Cast Down, one of probably the best removal spells in the game. Arguably, I mean, it really depends on the situation. Most of the time, Cast Down is going to hit just about anything. And then, one copy of Suffocating Fumes. And then we got four copies of our namesake card. We got Tithing Blade right here. This is such a fun card to bounce with your Glinthawks and your Core Skyfisher. It's almost like you have then 12 pieces of removal in one card because of all the times you can bounce it. So that's really fun. And then I got 4 copies of Ichor Wellspring. I know some lists run Lembas. I decided to go for Wellspring since it does so much more for you when you sacrifice it with a deadly dispute. Obviously, there's a huge argument to be made with the Scry one and the Gain Life from Lembas, and I may consider doing an even split of the two in the future. I haven't really made up my mind yet. And then I got 1 copy of Nihil Spellbomb in the main board. Gotta hate anyone trying to play out of the yard. And I got 1 copy of Hopeless Nightmare. And 1 copy of Omen of the Dead. And then I'm on a 20 land build here, so we got 1 plains, 1 swamp, or 2 swamps rather. 1 copy of Ash Barrens, 1 Bojuka Bog, 1 Radiant Fountain. So we got a lot of utility lands here. And then we got 3 copies of Orzhov Basilica, 1 Darksteel Citadel, 2 copies of Ancient Den, 4 copies of Vault of Whispers, and all these artifact lands here really help get our metalcraft for our vampire, so that is, I think, pretty important right now. And then 4 copies of Goldmire Bridge, and that's the main deck. And in the sideboard, what I brought 1 copy of Navigator's Compass. This is kind of a great thing to bring against the red players, as it's very easy to bounce and then replay with either your Skyfishers or your Glinthawks. It only costs 1 mana, and it's 1 mana to gain 3 life, which can, you do this enough times, it's really going to be kind of backbreaking against the red players. And then I brought another copy of Dawnbringer Cleric, as it obviously has many modes, a very, very useful card. And we also brought 3 more copies of Nihil Spellbombs, so we can fight all the Tolarian Terror decks out there. And then I got 2 copies of Dust to Dust. Now, the list that I'm going to be putting in the description of this video has 3 copies of Dust to Dust. I'm still waiting on 1 more to come in the mail for me. Have not received it yet. I decided to just run the deck with a slightly different sideboard than what I have on my Mox field, just so that I can get some reps in and play it. Been very excited to try this deck out. So yeah, so we just got 2 copies of Dust to Dust. Eventually there will be 3. And then I got 4 copies of Chainer's Edict, 1 Duress, and 3 copies of Drown in Sorrow. Okay, so now let's get into the matchups. Now so we in these events we play 3 rounds of a best of 3, obviously, because there is a sideboard. My first matchup actually went very well. The deck performed exactly as I would like it to perform in a matchup that is actually very much in the deck's favor. I played against my friend who was playing my white weenie deck. There was We went 2-0 in that game. It was very, very much the perfect matchup for us. And I got a couple tithing blades, and then I saw, like, I think at least 2 Glinthawks and 2 to 3 more core Skyfishers. So every time they played a creature, we had them sacrifice it. I saw even my 1 copy of, I think, Drown in Sorrow that's in the main board. Or was it? No, it was the Suffocating Fumes. Yep. So we did see that, and we were able to sweep the board after they had played Battle Screech and flashed it back. They did that twice, so they played Battle Screech 4 times, which, that brings out about you know a lot of birds. And so we were able to kill all of their birds before they were really able to go off in the first game, and just were able to deal with all their creatures until eventually we grabbed the Monarch, had a lot of stuff on the board, and we're just able to take over the game. They ended up scooping the first game. We went to the second game. They almost had me. They got me down to about three life. They swung for 17. I didn't really have much blockers at the time, but then I found one of my sweepers on the following turn, cleared the board, and was able to start gaining life and take over the game from there. So they ended up scooping that as well, since they were just top decking and not really seeing anything good. And it was very hard for Mono White to recover after that, since they basically played out their hand. And so that was a great match for us. I was feeling really good about the deck at that time. However, match two, we probably, just like we had the best possible matchup in the first game, we had the worst possible matchup in the second. We had to play Turbo Fog. So yeah, we had to play against a deck where we do have some answers for it, but our deck is built to fight creatures, and then we had to go up against a deck with zero creatures. I think we only finished one game in the best of three round, um, which they did win. And at that point, there was 4 minutes left for the round, as we get about an hour to play three games. And so at that point, I didn't even sideboard. We drew up 2-7, and then I told him that I would just scoop and that I just wanted to see what kind of hand I would get with the deck, which I just did for shits and giggles at that point, because I knew that there was no way I was gonna win in 4 minutes. Even if we went to time, I would have 5 turns to win. So 4 minutes and then 5 turns. I'm not gonna. This deck is gonna be it's going to be a huge struggle against Turbo Fog. It's not a good matchup for the deck whatsoever. I think maybe slightly better if you were running Goliath Paladin in the deck, which I'm considering going to, but I'm a bit on the fence of that, as I already have Orzhov Ephemerate as well as Golgari Gardens, which both are initiative decks, and I'm like, do I really want a third deck that is also just an initiative deck? Kind of not into that, just out on that side, and just having multiple decks that essentially are doing the same thing. So, but either way, I lost to Turbo Fog, and then round three I was playing against Koldatha Red, and this is where things really got where I think I really learned a lot about piloting this deck. So I did make multiple mistakes over the course of those games. So the first game, they basically had the god draw, and I didn't know what I was playing against, so I ended up keeping a hand that probably was suboptimal against Koldatha Red. Um, so I kind of had a slower hand, which is, decent against a lot of the decks, but Koldatha Red is such a fast aggro deck that they kind of ran away with the first game. Second game, I think I had a much better hand. I had sweepers, I had lots of removal, and I did make some play errors in that second match. I decided to they had like a turn three Koldatha Rebirth, and I decided to run or play Drown in Sorrow on that following turn, after they'd swung for, I think, about 6 or 8 damage that turn. I was able to deal with some of the creatures, had some blockers up, but so I swept the board, right, and I wasn't really, and this was pretty early on in the game, so I wasn't really able to have many plays after playing, because I played a Drown in Sorrow, which basically killed their Tomb Raiders, their Goblin Blast runners essentially, and all their Goblin tokens. But the following turn, they had another Koldatha Rebirth and another Bushwhacker. And though I was able to gain some life, I was able to deal with their board state, they had me down to, I think it was about 3 life. And this is where I made the biggest error of the game. I had played a core skyfisher, and I had 2 tithing blades on the field. I also had a navigator's compass on the field. I decided to bounce the tithing blade, which was essentially my downfall in that game. I sh in retrospect, I should have bounced the navigator's compass and replayed that, as after I passed the turn to them, they top decked a lightning bolt, and I lost. So yeah, it was a very, very big play error, and realistically speaking, I'm not so sure if I would have been able to stabilize after it. I probably could have. I definitely had some more life gain available. I think I had a vampire in hand as well as a Dawnbringer cleric. So I could have probably gained some more life and stabilized and hopefully have taken over that game. However, that one play area really threw it really threw the game towards my opponent, and they took full advantage of that with that lightning bolt and going face. So I lost 0-2 to Koldatha Red. So yeah, definitely have learned some things piloting the deck, and choices, especially when you're playing mid-range, choices really do matter. I do like this deck. My biggest criticism of it, honestly, after having played a few games with it, is that most of its plays happen during your turn and not your opponent's turn. You do have a few things that you can do during your opponent's turn, like say your Omen of the Deads, or your, cracking a Nihil spell bomb, Deadly Dispute, cast downs. But most of the stuff you do is on your turn, so it makes it a very proactive deck and less of an interactive deck, which is kind of the polar opposite of another very similar deck to this, being Orzhov Ephemerate, which, if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that that is one of my favorite decks to play. Uh, and I kind of feel like I like the Ephemerate a bit better than this, just because it is more reactive and you have more answers to what your opponent is doing, versus this where it's pretty much all your plays happen on your own turn. Definitely, I would say the downside of it, though it does have a lot of power with being able to bounce, Ickerwell Springs, Navigator's Compass, your Tithing Blades. Obviously, there's a lot of really great lines of play there, and it is really fun, just to continually bounce and replay stuff. And I do like the deck. I definitely feel like I need to get some more reps in it and improve my skill with the deck. I will probably be playing it some more. Definitely will leave a link to my current list that I have down in the description of this video if you want to check it out. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. As always, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time.